Over the last 10 weeks, I have been taking part in a course called Find Your Joy with Louise Fletcher, which has a focus on exploring painting and working out and understanding what you like and enjoy to do. And it's all really about trying to find your own way and your own individual way of creating art through intuitive approaches and in making marks and using paint in ways that you love to do, and keeping things very free and full of energy and experimentation. So if I just take you through what I've been doing. In the first week we were looking at painting to music and doing nothing else but creating images that reflected our intuition and our thoughts and feelings when we were listening to the music. And these are done with a limited palette of acrylic paints and various mark making tools. We then looked at painting our emotions and painting particular feelings that we might have, and I looked at the emotion of anxiety, and the black and white one is fairly raw and impactful, and then similarly in colour you get a similar sense, but obviously there's the colour there. We then had a great time exploring the marks that we like to make in painting, using a whole variety of tools, from brushes to domestic things such as squeegees and washing up things, and knives and palette knives and knitting needles and all sorts of things. And what we were asked to do was to make the widest range of marks we could, and then to cover up those marks that we didn't enjoy making and we don't like the look of, with the ones that we did. So what you see here are my particular marks that I love to make, and I love to use collage, and I love to use text in my work, and I love line work. So this is all coming through in these images here. What we then did, which was very interesting, was that we took a look at other artists that we loved the work of and identified what it was about those works that we really liked, and then made these experimental pieces reflecting some of those marks. So one of the artists I particularly love is Louise Noble, and the particular marks I like are these big blocks of colours with scratchy lines in them, and then more detailed areas with lots of colour, and hopefully you can see that coming through there. So I did the first two first, and then realised I wasn't adding my beloved collage, and incorporated some into that other piece. We then started to look at marks that we liked and to create images using a couple of those marks in particular that we loved. So my two were these bold marks that I love, together with line work. And whilst these three images do have line work in them and bold marks, what I didn't particularly like was that they were very literal. And so I took copies of these images and I recreated them in a much looser, impressionistic way, and these along the bottom are the three images that I produced through collage and mark making and line work and lettering. Now, after all that intuitive work and experimentation, we then started to look at how to make work with intention. So the three images here, this is stone, this is rain, and this is forest. So those were the three intentions, and we were asked to paint and make marks with those intentions in mind, using again the marks that we like to make, but this time being much more intentional about it. Now the third element of painting is all of the technical aspects of painting. So we then looked at creating contrasts in our work, and these four pieces I'm going to show you are the different sorts of contrasts you can make. So this one focuses on contrast in mark making. Now of course there are other ways of, there are other contrasts but in this piece, but the main focus was the different mark making. This next one here is contrast in colour, so you can see saturated and desaturated colour. You can see cool colours and warm colours and the contrasts. This one was all about tonal contrasts, and you can see the impact that tonal contrasts have, with the greatest tonal contrast of black and white, and how things stand out when black and white is close to each other. And then finally this one here is composition, or shapes, you can see the different shapes here, compositional contrast. So finally, in the very last module, we then looked at bringing everything together and not only painting intuitively and freely, but also with intention, and also bringing in those contrasts. And these 8 pieces I'm going to just show you are start points really, and they're looking at, they're based on a series of drawings I did in the landscape about the way in which the landscape layers so that you get a feeling of depth, and also the edges that exist in the landscape that can enable that feeling of depth. So this is just a series of 8 pieces. And then one of the things that was the issue for me was that I started getting quite tight and unable to kind of progress as I wanted to. So I then did some smaller pieces to help me loosen up and be less precious. And these are the 4 smaller pieces that I did with the same intention and with the same colour palette. So hopefully overall you can see the variety of work that we've produced as part of the Find Your Joy course.